Our opening reading is a poem entitled 1855 by Beth Piatote, who begins by quoting Walt Whitman. I celebrate myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul, I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. I celebrate myself, the poet writes, and what I hereby cede, you shall hereby cede. For the country relinquished by me, as good is relinquished by you. I loaf and convey to the United States all the right, title, and interest in my country, occupied and claimed. I give and grieve, meeting on spears of summer grass. I celebrate myself, and what I hold in reserve for my exclusive right and occupation shall be available from time to time to the president, at his discretion, surveyed into lots. I acknowledge my dependence and promise to be friendly. I pledge and agree not to shelter or conceal offenders, but to deliver them up to authorities for trial. I celebrate my Mioksat, who bore losses that we would not bear. I hold and cherish Article 3. I protect and love our usual and accustomed places, our exclusive right to take fish, to hunt, to gather roots and berries, and pasture our horses on open land. I celebrate our land, and our land is our land forever. I love and enlarge my soul. I love my people and our land. I remember the place of rye grass. We are one with our land, and our land is our ancestors' land always. All the land they are lighting, the land is shining bright forever.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Disney, a worship associate of this church, and I will be doing our chalice lighting. Our chalice lighting words today are by Francis Kojar, bringing us home to love. We light this chalice today as a people dedicated to personal growth. May it burn away the oppressions we have been taught and glow instead with the humility of learning. May it reignite our dreams for a better world and kindle our joy for simple living. May its warmth extend out into the forgotten alleyways of exclusion and bring us home to love, to welcoming, and to all the challenges, the questions, and the blessings of this beautiful path to becoming a beloved community.
Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln on this Sunday morning. My name is the Reverend Oscar Sinclair. I'm joined on the chancel by our worship associate, Kathy Disney. It is a pleasure to be together. It's a pleasure, too, to be here this Sunday. We've been doing this summer Indigenous programming series for 6 weeks, and I have often been sitting, usually back there, towards the AV table, so this is my first time here in a little bit. It is good to see all of your, what I presume are smiling faces behind masks. Maybe everybody is glaring at me saying, oh God, it's that guy again. But whether you are happy to see me or not, we are here at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln to live into our vision as a church, where we say that the Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community, uniting reason and spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and the world. That's what we're about. Every Sunday we gather, every Tuesday night we gather, every moment we are together. So welcome, whether this is your 500th time here or if this is your first time here, whomever you love, wherever you are on life's journey, we are so glad that you are with us today. We'll enter into worship with some music. Before we do, I just want to say that I'm going to ask you all to stay after the service. So start thinking about that now. We have a guest speaker after the service where we are just going to take like 10 minutes to go get some coffee and come back in here. So if that is a thing that is going to derail your day, you may now consider it derailed. If that is a thing where you gently need to text somebody that my plans have changed, there's more exciting stuff happening at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, just do that surreptitiously during this first song. And then put your phones away and join us in worship. So we'll begin with music.
Good morning again. Would invite any big people who feel like they want to be like little people to come down, because we don't have any little people here, I don't think, at the moment. But maybe we could find some. Anyway, our Time for All Ages today is a book called Berry Song, and it's written by Michaela Goad. Michaela Goad is part of the Tlingit tribe of Alaska. And here we go. On an island on the edge of a wide, wild sea, Grandma shows me how to live on the land. And this is a beautiful book. If you can go to the library and get it, you can see the pictures closer up. Together, we pull hemlock branches from the salty ocean, heavy with herring eggs like tiny stars. On the beach, we gather ribbons of slippery seaweed dancing in the tide. By the tumbling icy falls, we dip our nets for the silvery salmon hidden beneath the current. And in the forest, we pick berries. Salmonberry, cloudberry, blueberry, naganberry, huckleberry, soapberry, strawberry, crowberry. The berries sing to us, glowing like little jewels. We sing too, so berry and bear know we are here. Grandma tells me we speak to the land, and the land speaks to us, I say. Huckleberry, soapberry, strawberry, crowberry, thimbleberry, swampberry, bogberry, chalkberry. The forest sings to us through the misting rain and whoosh of wing, and the sweet smell of cedar and the tickle of moss. We sing to the land, so the land knows we are grateful. Grandma tells me we take care of the land, and the land takes care of us. Gudnachish, I say, giving thanks. So Gudnachish is Tlingit for thank you. Let's try that. I would say that to these people. I will say it to you. Let's try that. Gudnachish. Gudnachish. Nimbleberry, swampberry, bogberry, chalkberry, lingonberry, raspberry, bunchberry, cranberry. Our ancestors sing to us, their voices dancing on wind and water. We sing too, so they know that we'll always remember. And we sing for the future, so that we will hear and all will know this beautiful berry song. Grandma tells me we are part of the land, as the land is part of us, I say. The ocean sings to us, rolling ashore like a beating drum. We sing too, so the tides know we are home. Together we make salmonberry syrup and cranberry marmalade until the kitchen glows like a summer sun. We feast on huckleberry pie and strawberry crisp, raspberry scones, and freshly whipped soapberries. We gather gifts of blueberry jelly and naganberry jam. Gudnachish, we say, giving thanks. The nights grow long, edged in forest. As the sea fades gently into sky, the forest is resting, the forest is dreaming, waiting for berry song. And so the seasons change. On an island at the edge of a wild, wide sea, I take my little sister's hand. Lingonberry, raspberry, bunchberry, cranberry, salmonberry, cloudberry, blueberry, naganberry. I have so much to show you. And that is the end of our story. As the children would have left for their classrooms, please rise in body or spirit as we sing hymn 112, Do You Hear?
A central moment in our worship services each week, maybe the central moment, is the time that we join together as a community to mark the moments of our lives. We share with one another our joys, our sorrows, the events that mark steps on our journey. The threads of sorrow and those of joy are intertwined in the fabric of our lives, present for all, remembered by all. We share those threads, and in the sharing, they are woven together with those of others in our community, magnifying our joys, comforting us in our sorrows. So into the chat, if you're on live stream, or into this shared space that we are holding here, I invite you to share the name of a person you are carrying in sorrow this morning.
So many of our Lincoln community are suffering from food insecurity today.
Folks in the Lincoln community suffering from food insecurity. Evelyn, and the family of Laura Weymouth, who passed away last week. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Scott. I apologize if there are names in the chat that I do not see. My phone is sitting in my office right now. Sorrow is not the final word. We also come to this service every week carrying great joys. So, into this shared space, will you speak the name of somebody that you are carrying in joy this morning?
Oscar, Christine Davis put it in the chat, Meredith and Gwenna.
Meredith,
That's the source sorrow.
Meredith and Gwenna.
And then Marcos, families of the deceased honored at last night's powwow. That was a sorrow.
A sorrow for those honored, the families of those deceased honored at the powwow last night.
For our joy, my grandparents, Dean and Beth, are fully recovered from COVID.
Dean and Beth are fully recovered from COVID. That is a joy.
Unitarian Church of Lincoln is about to have a little free pantry.
The Unitarian Church of Lincoln is about to have a little free pantry.
Clarence is home from rehab and is walking with a walker.
Clarence is home from rehab.
Conan, my son.
Conan?
Joy to have all our guests here today.
It is a joy to have guests here.
Eric and Megan are having a family blessing for their baby due less than a month.
There's a baby coming and a blessing happening. I'll add that this weekend I got to meet my best friend's baby. We had not seen them because of COVID, but we have now met little Zoe.
From the chat, Christine Davis says, the Kansas voters.
The Kansas voters are a joy. We carry a lot every time we come into this room. This part's not on the script, but the reason that this is a central part of our worship service is every time we gather, we are holding the fullness of human experience. That the way that we can authentically be a community is by showing up authentically ourselves with all of the joy and all of the sorrow that we hold. And we know that there are some sorrows and some joys that aren't yet ready to be spoken, but that are also present in this room with us. So let us take a moment of silence for all of them, and then we will join in singing. Thank you for your presence. I do want to say something real quick about our next hymn. You'll see that it's a responsive hymn. It's actually a responsive reading in our gray hymnal as well. And this was written by Rob Eller Isaacs, who passed away about a month ago after a brief illness. Rob was a force in Unitarian Universalism. He served on the national board. He was the senior minister at Unity up in Minneapolis. Before that, he and his wife Jan served in Oakland. He was one of the great singers of the Unitarian Universalist clergy, not always on tune, but always, always with great authority and volume. Which also describes his ministry. He always spoke with great authority and volume on whatever he had opinions on, and there were many. And one of the things that he had opinions on is that even as a lifelong Unitarian and a lifelong humanist, that we should incorporate humility into our worship. And so he wrote this responsive reading that was then put into our hymnal. And he would have me add that the hymnal commission changed this hymn over his objection that it was originally written in first person, not third. He wrote it, "I forgive myself and I forgive you." That doesn't work so well as a hymn. So we'll sing it as it's written in the hymnal. We forgive ourselves and each other. And Bob and Bill will lead us in it.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. Now to have the right words, please join me. We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible,
we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
for each time we have struck out in anger without just cause,
We forgive ourselves and each other.
for each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others,
We begin ourselves and each other.
for the selfishness that sets us apart and alone,
We forgive ourselves and each other.
for falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit,
We forgive ourselves and each other.
for losing sight of our unity,
We begin ourselves and each
for those and for so many acts, both evident and subtle, which have fueled the illusion of separateness.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again.
Each week, we take up a collection to support the work of this church and our partners in the community. We do this because just as we all grow from our participation in this community, we all give back through our time, our talent, and our treasure. Will the ushers please come forward? You may also text your offering to UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256. That's UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Yeah.
Can you help with the lights, Heather? Ah, hello. Thank you. Thank you so much. Our reading today is a poem by Franklin K.R. Klein titled Grocery Story. Today I went to the grocery store and bought several organic fruits and vegetables so as to keep my health tip-top. I carried the little blue Cherokee card in my wallet. There was a sale on seltzer. A song played that reminded me of my ex-wife. I paused and cried by the frozen pizza, then put a frozen pizza into my cart. I walked along the store listening to the music, looking at the cans and stacks, the weird, infinite, finite nature of the grocery store. It was sunny. A woman softly crying by the bread. I am never more alive than when I am filling up my cart. I walked more and more through every aisle. It came time to put my things on the conveyor belt and then have them recorded with a satisfying beep, then pull out the small piece of plastic with all my money on it and give it to the nice lady who smiled, took my money. I didn't need to give it to her. I should have just walked out and not paid for anything. She gave me my card back, reminded me it needed to slide into the computer, which asked a few questions. A man put my things into a bag for me. I got into my car on the stolen land, and on the radio they were discussing the Treaty of New Echota.
Something curious happened in my life last May. It was a bruising spring. You've heard this story, I think, and in any case, it's not a particularly unusual story. Both my wife Stacy and I had health crises in our respective families. Stacy was rehearsing and performing at the Lincoln Community Playhouse. My professional life was more exciting than usual, trying to close out the congregational year and a term as president of the Faith Coalition of Lancaster County. We had house guests, plural, as Stacy's family came to see her perform, and the church's community minister visited for a series of programs here in Lincoln. And on top of all of that, somehow, I was in class remotely for my doctorate. So for the first time I can honestly remember, I dropped a class. Yes, apparently this is something that can happen. It's not a habit for me. You do what you signed up for and all that. It did complicate my schedule in the DMin program a little bit. But in a moment where there were too many balls up in the air to keep track of, that felt like the thing that I could let go of to bring some balance to my schedule and get through the end of the month. So it was surprising to me and just about everybody around me when 3 days after dropping that class, I found myself walking down the Billy Wolf Trail carrying a 15-foot-long teepee pole, marching across the city in solidarity with the Niskaythe Prayer Camp. The question that Stacy asked a few times is why? So a little quick review about Niskaythe. Kevin Abarask spoke here 3 weeks ago, I think, about the work of the Niskaythe Prayer Camp. And if you didn't get a chance to see that, go back in our YouTube channel and watch it. I am at best a supporting role in this story, but Kevin is at the heart of it. Briefly, this spring, the Catholic Diocese of Lincoln sold some land near Wilderness Park to a development company, Manzito, who proposes to build a large housing development on it. This development required approval by the city, which happened in April. But importantly, the development is located right across the street from the oldest and most used sweat lodge in Lancaster County. The Native community here did not feel that they had been heard in the process, and that this development will impact their ability to practice their ceremonies. And that the city, diocese, and mayor's office had not included them appropriately in the approval process. This is the short version of this story. So overnight, after that council decision to approve the development, a group of activists set up 6 teepees on Snell Hill, occupying the land there to get folks to pay attention to what was happening. And eventually, after 3 weeks of occupation, the group decided that the best way forward was to take the camp off of the hill and to walk, carrying one of the 6 teepees from the location near Wilderness Park to the city-county building, to the state capitol, and then to the Catholic diocesan offices. And in each place, erect the teepee and say prayers. So that was the action that I joined. But that doesn't say why. It's a few reasons, ranging from the theoretical and national to the practical and highly personal. So we'll start from the big picture and then work our way down. It's no particular mystery at this point that Unitarian Universalism, this faith that we share in this building, has put countering white supremacy and other forms of oppression at the heart of who we are as a faith. This congregation has been participating in the Beloved Conversation program for 2 years. Out on the side of our building, right there, is a rainbow banner and a banner declaring that Black Lives Matter. But a part of that work that we maybe have not talked about as much until this summer is the Unitarian Universalist Association's long work on indigenous rights and repudiating the doctrine of discovery. Here's a responsive resolution from the 2012 General Assembly. Responsive resolutions are guiding documents for the association. They're what give direction to Unitarian Universalist churches and the national board and staff. Whereas, this is in 2012, the UU Board of Trustees has submitted to the member congregations a report explaining the doctrine of discovery and why the board believes it to be contrary to Unitarian Universalist principles. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the delegates of the 2012 General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, repudiate the doctrine of discovery as a relic of colonialism, feudalism, and religious, cultural, and racial biases that have no place in the modern-day treatment of indigenous peoples. This work grew and reached a point just a few years ago where it was intended to be the focus of an entire General Assembly. This was the programming we were going to do as an association in 2020, within months of the 400th anniversary of the English landing in Plymouth, Massachusetts. We Unitarian Universalists were to gather in Providence, Rhode Island, just down the road from Plymouth, and complicate that legacy, which is a legacy that is in some ways our own. Our churches point right back to that ship and say, that's our religious heritage. And so on the 400th anniversary, we were supposed to gather in Providence and talk about that. Unfortunately, we did not gather in Providence, Rhode Island in June of 2020. As you might remember, there were some things going on. The online General Assembly was as much about resilience in the face of COVID as anything else. But there was still a resolution that came out of that moment. I'm going to read this one a little bit more extensively. We, the delegates of the 2020 General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association, call upon the Unitarian Universalist Association and its member congregations, so everybody in this room, to continue to gather in solidarity with the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, Standing Rock Nation, and all indigenous peoples struggling to preserve their lands, waters, peoples, sacred sites, and sovereignty. Continue to push for release of indigenous water protectors from prisons and policies that criminalize resistance to extractive colonialism, and adopt a vision of prison abolition. Work nationally, statewide, and locally on public policy that is decolonizing, such as establishing Indigenous Peoples Day, including Indigenous peoples' history in public education curricula, and eliminating racist mascots, monuments, and flags. Work to stop and reverse ecological harm in genuine collaboration with and taking leadership from communities most consistently and harshly impacted by extractive exploitation of land, water, air, and all beings. Research, identify, and acknowledge the indigenous peoples historically and/or currently connected with the land occupied by congregations, and find ways to act in solidarity with or even partner with those indigenous peoples. So it's important to say that my work with the Niskithe Prayer Camp and this congregation's work over the whole summer are not some out there, complicated, unusual part of our tradition. This is core Unitarian Universalism. This is what we say that we are about. It is an expression of the tradition that we are a part of and that we proclaim every Sunday morning when we gather. But theology and resolutions aren't enough to make anyone march or take action. There's a famous story among UU clergy about the 1965 civil rights marches in Selma, Alabama. The history of the UUA and race has a lot of times where we've fallen short, but this is one of the times where we are, I think, justifiably proud of our response as a tradition, how we showed up as a denomination. Something like 250 UU ministers and lay people showed up in Selma within 2 days of the call going out for folks to come march. 10% of serving Unitarian Universalist clergy dropped everything and headed to Alabama on 1 day of notice. And a few years ago, Mark Morrison Reed, one of the foremost historians of the Black UU experience, tried to explain why that happened in that moment. And one of the things that he hit on was relationship. Many of the clergy that showed up on short notice in Selma had also been to the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. They had already been there. They knew by proximity, if not personally, the leaders of the civil rights movement. So when Martin Luther King sent out a telegram on March 8th of 1965, quote, calling on clergy of all faiths representative of every part of the country to join me for a minister's march to Montgomery on Tuesday morning, March 9th, tomorrow, Unitarians and Universalists showed up. The relationship that existed before March 8th is what made March 9th possible. This is also, I think, how I felt when I saw the call from the Niskithe Prayer Camp to join them in walking across Lincoln. Because first, the prayer camp was my neighbor. Very literally, I probably bike past that section of Wilderness Park at least once a week over the summer. I live right off the Jamaica North Trail. And second, we know these people. I know these people. Kevin Abarask, Judy Hart introduced me to Kevin over coffee in October, saying, what might we do together? What might we dream up together? Renee Sansuchi has been a friend of this congregation for years. I knew her name before I knew the names of most of you. This is not an unknown movement. These are people we know whose lives and welfare are tied up in our own. So the relationship and the commitments that the UUA has made were enough to get me to support the work of the prayer camp, but that still doesn't quite get at the answer to that why question. It starts to get there. But why, in the midst of a month when I was stretched as thin as I have ever been, did I suddenly take a full day to join this thing? When Kevin was here 3 weeks ago, he mentioned that everyone at the prayer camp came away from it changed in some way. That everyone there carries their experiences with them. That all of us had transformative experiences in that place. Most of those are not my story to tell. But one is. In late April, this spring, I was working through a day with a long to-do list. I have a book that runs my life. Every day has a to-do list, and this was like a 15 bullet point day. And one of the things on the list was to visit the new prayer camp that had just been set up near Wilderness Park to express my support, and then get home to start writing a sermon. I thought it was going to be a 10-minute visit. I had and still have my calendar during the week down to 15-minute increments. But when I arrived there, I was welcomed into the circle that they had formed around the fire, and informed by Renee that we were about to start ceremonial time, that I should take off my watch, put it in my pocket, and just be present. Slow down and have this time in prayer. Renee did not know this, but that was also the morning that I had found out that my grandmother had entered hospice. And you know how things get, right? I thought I was processing that well. I had talked to my family, helped to find appropriate medical supports in East Lansing, consoled my little sister. But I had not, until that moment when I was forced to slow down, done enough to recognize my own grief. That in addition to being a busy season, this had also been a season of loss. Giants in my life. My grandmother, but also my mentor, Gene. Rob Eller Isaacs, whose reading we just read, had just announced that he was ill. My own sadness that these people that I had loved, in my grandmother's case, this person I had loved my whole life, was about to become one of the ancestors, present in heart and story, but no longer on the other end of a phone call. And so standing there in this circle where nobody around it knew what was going on, with my watch in my pocket and my to-do list back in the car, I just stood there and started weeping. It was for me unexpectedly holy time. So by the time the call went out to March, a few weeks later, there wasn't a question of whether or not I would participate. These were my neighbors, my relations, who my tradition asks me to support and who I have shared sacred time with. And at that point, there is no longer a question. There's a maybe apocryphal quote about FDR during World War II, who said of the Lend-Lease Act, when your neighbor's house is burning down, you don't haggle over the price of the hose. When our neighbors need help, we don't stop long enough to think about what we're doing. We act. Here's the interesting part of this morning, though, for me. I am 15 minutes into this sermon. I have not yet directly mentioned our summer Indigenous programming series. Not directly. So for the last 6 weeks, the Unitarian Church of Lincoln has been engaging with this pretty straightforward question with wide-ranging causes and wide-ranging effects. The question is, should the Unitarian Church of Lincoln have a formal land acknowledgement stating that we gather on stolen land, that this place was not always called Lincoln, Nebraska, and that the community that the land was stolen from is still here? Over 6 weeks, we've had Indigenous activists from Lincoln and the UUA speak here. We've had historians and members screened movies and visited art exhibits. Members of our church attended the powwow at the Indian Center last night, all building up to this question in August. What should our land acknowledgement be? And it's important for me to say that this work came out of the congregation, not from me. It's happened entirely in parallel with my participation with the Niskithe Prayer Camp. Until recently, I wasn't preaching as part of this series. It was wholly lay-led. And that's important to say because I am so proud of this congregation and what you have been doing this summer. We talk all the time about shared ministry, right? About this idea, this big goal that we're all working towards. But I do not know a better example in the Unitarian Universalist Association of a congregation demonstrating shared ministry on an issue that really, really matters. To serve a congregation that engages the hard conversations with nuance, who shows up again and again and again and takes ownership over that showing up. It is immensely gratifying for me and a joy to be a part of. But more than just pride, more than just gratitude, this summer series is also an opportunity and a challenge, right? Our mission and vision are clear. We are here to transform ourselves and the world, and we do that by showing up. That's the method to living into our vision. So the opportunity and the challenge is, how do we get to the point where we show up? Where we see our neighbor's house on fire and go sprinting out the door before we even realize we're awake? How do we get to the point when the Treaty of New Echete is as present as it is for Franklin Klein? Response is grounded in relationship. That was Mark Morrison's lesson about Selma. We run out the door when we know that it's our neighbor. When we've shared meals, jokes, stories about our kids, then when there's a need, we show up. This is implicitly the work that we are doing this summer. We're not just writing a land acknowledgement. Kevin, Kia, Renee, Mike, Tyler this afternoon, these aren't anonymous activists in our community. They are our friends. They are our community. We are in community with them. Response is grounded in tradition and spirit, and that's what Unitarian Universalism is called to. That's where that piece comes in. We are asked by our association to practice solidarity, called to the work of decolonization. And even as we show up, we're doing this work among ourselves, constantly asking what we can do better, where we can find solid ground for our spirits in the midst of the work. And finally, response is grounded in response. That sounds like a tautology, right? But you can also express it as a Nike slogan. Just do it. Do the thing. That's maybe the last lesson of the day, because by the time you're marching, somewhere between the state capitol and the Catholic diocese, it's actually too late to gracefully back out. No matter how hot it is, no matter how much your feet hurt, you're there. Once you leave your front door, headed to your neighbor's house with hose in hand, the commitment is what carries you forward. Even if you do it imperfectly, even if you need regular correction, it is easier to keep moving forward towards our aspirations than to drop out and back. And so the land acknowledgement is like this. We aren't going to get it right or perfect the first time. Nobody does. But it is not meant to be a perfect paragraph that we mount on the wall and admire for its artistry. It's meant to be a hook, pulling us toward the work, calling us to show up, to tend to relationships, to do the thing over and over again. So this is the last Sunday of this Summer Indigenous Programming Series, the last Sunday morning that is part of this series. We have learned a lot. And so the next step over the next 2 weeks is to start to put that learning into practice, to do the thing, to put together what the land acknowledgement will be and figure out how we integrate it into the life of this congregation. That's the culmination of this summer series, but it is also the beginning of the next chapter, where we deepen the relationships we formed this summer and continue working in solidarity to bring a more just and peaceful world. And relationship in all things. So this morning's worship service is coming to a close, but I'm not going to extinguish this chalice. We're going to sing one more song, then a benediction, then one more song. But while that last song is playing, we're going to invite you to take a 5-minute break while we reset our AV equipment and attend to the needs of biology. And after that, we'll regather in this space to hear from Taylor Keene, whose bio is over there. Taylor Keene is a teacher, community builder, and Native American thought leader based out of Omaha, Nebraska. His backstory is as diverse as it is impressive. He's a member of both the Omaha tribe and the Cherokee Nation, attended Dartmouth College and Harvard University, getting a master's of public policy and an MBA, and enjoyed a successful stint in corporate America before returning to Nebraska to teach entrepreneurship and management at Creighton University. His most recent undertaking is Sacred Seed, a project with the goal of preserving Native American heritage and history through collecting, growing, and spreading the seeds of corn and other traditional Native American foods. So, our last hymn is number 168, One More Step. Let's take that, and then we'll take a break. Would you please rise in body or in spirit? Well, Renee is not here, and our tradition is our own, so I will take out my watch and tell you that you have until 11:15. So we're going to play one more song, and then we will restart back in here at 11:15 with Taylor. So if we can cue that song up, we will leave the chalice going for now. Give us a couple minutes to reset AV, get some coffee if there's coffee out there, and we'll see you back in a couple minutes.